don't take no time to play. All he does is work all day.
I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in!
A story is a set of events that illustrate rules of the universe through metaphors drawn into conflict.
I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
Stories will start to mess with you and change how you see the world and other people and yourself.
Stories don't have a theme. Stories are a theme. Stories are the manifestation of the theme.
Has a story ever changed how you act? Legitimately. Like, you observed it enough that it became a truth that you just believed, and it instantly changed how you navigated life, how you treated people, and worked towards goals. And I don't mean it in a way that's like, yeah, that's an ideal. I'm gonna work towards treating people better. I mean, you saw it, you thought, yeah, that's true, and lived your life that way. Like, if there's a fence in front of you, you don't need to work towards anything to not run into it. You see it, and you just change your course accordingly. In the same way, has a story ever showed you a scenario that you understood and it just changed your path? Because this is what I want to explore moving forward with Critical Hit. Who I am today is largely because of truths that I internalized watching TV shows when I was a kid, from Arthur to Fairly Odd Parents to Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. At the time, I didn't know that these shows were affecting me as much as they were, as probably you did. I just watched them and thoroughly enjoyed them. The characters just made me laugh, a lot. But the situations they would get in were weirdly real, and it would cause me to imagine myself in those situations and play out what I would do. For instance, a character who changes themselves to look and act like a cool kid is somehow accepted into the in crowd, but it's not what they thought it would be, and they miss hanging out with their more intimate friends and doing what they like. Based on that, I decided that the more enjoyable and respectable thing to do is to do what you love with who you love, regardless of what the cool kids think. A character finds out that a peer doesn't like him, so they go to ridiculous ends in order to get this kid to like him. But in the end, the kid still doesn't like him. The main character then realizes that he doesn't need everyone's acceptance, and he's thankful for his friends who do invest in him. Cool, so I don't need everyone to like me. Acceptance points don't give me value. A likable, unassuming character is given a lot of money or power, and then becomes a monster by devaluing everyone around him in order to maintain his control and status. So, with excess power and money, anyone, including me, can become a monster. Like I said, the stories of these shows would cause me to play out thought experiments in my head. I had crushes, and so did Timmy Turner, Ned Bigby, Kim Possible, Laura McQuarrie. How did they approach it? What I found was countless stories showing characters following superficial attraction, but in the end found themselves to be a part of a more meaningful relationship with someone else who better understands them. Or a character tries to impress their crush with like cooler clothes or fake interest, only to find out that they actually liked them more when they were just themselves. There was this episode of Fairly Odd Parents where Cosmo and Wanda turned Timmy into a girl, and because of that, he actually became friends with Trixie. And through that, they could now talk more vulnerably. She reveals that she doesn't want just a basic guy with cool stuff. She's more interested in someone who understands and relates to all the nuances of her character. That storyline was told to me through so many TV shows and movies that I watched, and it literally affected how I thought of and approached romantic relationships throughout my entire life. And I was just like, oh, duh, yeah, a more understanding and intimate relationship is obviously the way to go. Which caused me to perform less when I liked a girl. I just assumed it would happen organically. Which I can anecdotally attest to not being a great strategy if your goal is to date a lot of individuals in a limited time span. But if your goal is to be with someone who intimately holds and understands your core values, regardless of how long it takes and even at risk of not finding them at all, then I highly recommend that strategy. How'd you like that one, dear?
What?
The point is that seeing the arguments those shows made for the best way that I should live was like seeing a fence in front of me. I observed what they concluded, and if it made sense, I just lived my life as that being a truth that everyone sees and understands. I wish I could say that with the amount of emphasis that I feel it is. Think about that. Stories can change what we see and understand. What does that even mean? These little distilled nuggets of life showed me arguments that explored the logical conclusions of philosophical strategies and psychological patterns, and then concluded with a claim on which strategy is better, which has huge implications. It's a significant claim to suggest that you'll live a better life if you're with someone who understands you than with someone who's just attractive. It's an enormous claim to suggest that you'll live a worse life if you derive your value from the acceptance and adoration of others. Just all of this. It is an insane claim to suggest that there are ways to live that are better at all. What does better mean? As compared to what? Headed to what goal? You need a goal in order to define something as better than something else. If the goal is to travel further faster, then we can measurably observe a car being better than a horse-drawn carriage. But if the goal is less polluted air, then the horse-drawn carriage would be better. So what is the goal of life as far as we can tell? Well, obviously that's a heavily debated topic, but at the very least, we can all agree that a core goal to life is to survive. In other words, to keep living, which is the purpose of stories. We tell stories in order to communicate and argue survival information. From the Art of Story channel, Adam Skelter phrases it, it is through the ritual of story that the rules of survival are woven into our worldview. Brian McDonald, in his fantastic book, recalls a story that was passed on to every new kid at his neighborhood sledding hill. This cautionary tale was of another kid who ran into a specific utility pole and died. He says, I think it's because buried within this story is survival information. And this survival information is, I believe, why we tell stories. If this is true, that our engagement to stories developed to explore and spread ideas to help us better survive, then the claims stories make would be where humans presently are in our conscious evolutionary understanding of the best way to survive. Which would mean that our understanding and course correction to the themes of the stories that we find most compelling is of existential precedent. If this is true, then we need to stop being so passive with how we interact with stories. Movies, music, books, video games cannot just be entertainment. They are how we moment to moment understand the world around us, how it works, and how we should navigate through it. So, that's my goal with this new season of Critical Hit. I want to focus on pulling apart thematic arguments and more explicitly communicate their practical implications, to explore what stories say so we can constructively decide on what is true. And then, act two. As always, I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. And if you think that this content is important and valuable and dope, then please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/criticalhit. That's right. There's no story. Like, I just got that URL. Who didn't have it? I'm very happy about that. I also just built a Discord server, link in the description below, so please go there, talk, converse, figure out what life is about. And in according with the Patreon, there are certain tiers that get certain privileges in the Discord, and that's all malleable. I'm still figuring a lot of this out, but hey, we're here now. Things have been built. I'm very excited. Thank you guys for being around, and yeah, I will see you in 2 weeks.